Hello, everyone, and welcome back to American Ultras Talk. The CONCACAF U20 Championship starts tomorrow night. The USA U20s will take on Jamaica's U20s on Fox Sports 2, so you can watch it there. And I'm here to just break down the game, give a little preview, starting lineup I would pick, look at Jamaica's roster, and predictions. I am here by myself, as I will be for the majority of the U20 content this summer, but don't worry, Yuri will be involved in all of the Olympics content and everything else that we'll be bringing to you. This is just a little bonus because we think it's important to cover all the U.S. youth national teams, especially in big tournaments such as this, that can qualify us to the U20 World Cup next year. So without further ado, let's get into it. And let's just start by looking at Jamaica's roster because in the last U20 video, I previewed our roster. So if you haven't watched that, go watch that now, get an idea of what our roster looks like. But for this one, I'll just look at Jamaica's roster real quick. I think the notable players are mainly the ones that don't play in Jamaica. I mean, there's a couple that play domestically that are pretty dangerous, but I think the main ones to look at are the American dual nationals, like Josh Grant in goal, plays for Red Bulls Academy, Romain Blake in the defense, who plays for Chicago Fire. And then you've got Ashton Gordon, who I think personally is my favorite player on this Jamaican team. I think he's going to be the most threatening. Plays for Atlanta United and has even got first team minutes. He's a regular for their MLS Next Pro team, but he has got significant first team minutes in the Open Cup this season. He's one to watch out for sure. And then Niall Waugh is the other one who plays for FC Dallas's Academy. And then in the midfield, they have Mackay Welch and Fabian Reynolds, who both play abroad in England, Welch for Leyton Orient and Fabian Reynolds for Wolves Academy. So they have a good spine of their team that plays abroad at a decent level that can challenge us a little bit. Ultimately, do I think they're the strongest team in this group? No, I think Costa Rica are probably a little bit better, but they're still not going to be a pushover. And ultimately, I think it's going to be a little bit difficult to get a result here. Now into the starting lineup that I would choose for the USA U20s for this match. Now, we haven't gotten to see much of anything from this team. I mean, they had 4 friendlies in 2 different camps leading up to this tournament, but it was a little bit hard to watch them. And ultimately, a lot of these players play at the academy level with their clubs, so it's a little bit difficult to get your hands on game film from most of them. So it's just a best guess. I'm sure it will change after the first game. But for at least this one, the starting lineup I would go with is Adam Beaudry in goal. I think he has the most experience with the U.S. youth national team out of all our goalkeepers, and he really impressed me at the U17 World Cup last year. So I trust him fully, not as much as some of the other options that weren't released per se, but I think he can definitely do a job in this tournament. I'd start him in goal. For the defense, I'd go for Aiden Harangi at right back. He plays for Eintracht Frankfurt's second team this season. He's going to be involved with them for the first time. He was with their U19s last year. I think he's been progressing well over in Germany, and ultimately, I think he's a pretty solid right back option for this group. The center backs, our hand is kind of forced here because we only have 2 natural center backs in the roster, which is a pretty big concern. But I addressed that in the roster reaction video. Noah Cobb from Atlanta United and Stuart Hawkins from Seattle Sounders are the center backs here. Cobb has been a pretty regular starter for Atlanta in MLS, which is a good thing to see at this level. And Hawkins, kind of like Ashton Gordon that I mentioned for Jamaica, has gotten a few minutes, mainly in the Open Cup, but has been a regular starter for their MLS Next Pro team and has been pretty solid. Also a U17 World Cup veteran. So I think, our hand is forced, but it's not a bad center back duo to have. And then at left back, this one's pretty obvious. It's our captain from FC Dallas, Nolan Norris. Very versatile player, but primarily plays left back for this group. He played pretty much every minute in the 2 camps leading up to this, and I expect him to retain his place as the captain, and that's who I would pick as well, especially considering the other left back options on this roster. Now into the midfield, and it's looking like it'll probably be a 4-3-3. Seems to be the system that all U.S. teams use, whether it's the main national team, as we know, but also the youth national teams down the system. This one is a little bit tricky. You can go a few different ways. We have one out-and-out number 10 on the roster, maybe one other one that's listed as the wingers, but Cruz Medina is the 10 here. Ultimately, I wouldn't be opposed to playing him. I think it would be nice to have someone there that can create chances, especially since most of our center mid options are pretty defensive-minded. But I am going to go with a 3 workhorse midfield, kind of like we see with the MMA midfield for the USMNT. I want Pedro Soma at the 6, and then Nico Shakiris and Taha Habrun as the 2 center mids. Brooklyn Reigns is another one who deserves a shout at starting here, and I expect he'll get a lot of minutes in the tournament. He might even start, but just for me, I value Shakiris's MLS experience more, despite it being with the worst team in the league. He's starting every week for San Jose Earthquakes, and Reigns isn't really playing much for Houston Dynamo, so I just value that experience a little bit more. And then Taha Habrun hasn't been playing as much either, kind of like Reigns, but I rate him higher. I think he's been very good for the U.S. youth national teams in the past and at the MLS Next Pro level and academy level with Columbus Crew. Also one of the hardest teams to break into in the league, considering how good they are. So I think overall I rate him the highest out of the midfielders here as of now. And Soma's probably second for me. So they lock in as the 2 starters, and then Shakiris joins them just due to the experience. But I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Reigns. I wouldn't be opposed to seeing Medina and us playing with a 10. But now onto the forwards. At the winger positions, we have basically 3 options here, maybe 4. I would start Ninfa Berchimas on the left-hand side and David Vasquez on the right. I think Vasquez is far and away the most experienced winger just because he's the only one out of the 3, Berchimas and Xavier Gosso are the other 2, that isn't playing up a cycle. He's been with the U.S. youth national teams for a while. Now Berchimas is also experienced because he's been playing up a cycle for a while, but I mean he excelled at the U17 World Cup last fall. Vasquez was part of that group as well. Didn't play as much as Berchimas did, but I think they should both be the starters. Vasquez brings the experience, and he's been very good in MLS Next Pro this season. Berchimas has been, truthfully, a little bit underwhelming, but he's starting to find his feet again, and I think we all know what he can do. He has the ability, he has the potential. I would start him here in this tournament, especially in the first game. Try to get him some goal contributions, because I think this tournament could be a key factor into getting him some more minutes. Hopefully he can get more first team minutes with Charlotte next season. He started the season with their first team, but kind of dropped off a little bit, has been mainly with their MLS Next Pro team, but I think he's probably the most talented in terms of potential player on this roster. I think he has to start. And of course, Vasquez on the other side. And then at striker, there's a lot of options. There's been a lot of options in the cycle as a whole, but a lot of deserving choices didn't make the roster. Ultimately, I'm going to go for Keiro Figueroa. I think he's my number 1 striker in this age group as a whole, made the roster or didn't make the roster, and I think he just makes sense to start here. Zambrano Delgado is another option, but Figueroa should be with Liverpool's U21s this coming season, and I think this tournament will be a perfect stepping stone to get him to this level. The one minor concern is that he is coming off a pretty significant injury that made him miss most of the second half of the season with Liverpool's U18s, but I think he's ready for this level. I think he's our best striker on the roster, potentially even our best forward on the roster, so it just makes sense to see him starting here, but that's just what I would go with. Let me know in the comments if you would change anything. And then finally, the last part of this video, it's a pretty quick one, but I'm just going to go give my prediction for the game. I think it will be 3-0. I trust our defense, despite the fact that the center backs maybe are a little bit shaky. We didn't get our first choice options there or in goal released. I think it's good enough to contain this Jamaica team. Admittedly, it's a little bit hard to gauge results just because we haven't seen this team play against any CONCACAF competition yet. But, I mean, if you look back to 2022, our U20s basically ran through that competition with relative ease. They drew 1 game against Canada in the group stage, but all the others were pretty comprehensive wins. I think this tournament will be a little bit less of that. I think though the games will be a little bit closer just because the talent level isn't as high as it was back in 2022. But I think most of the games will still be fairly comfortable, and I'm expecting this one to be just that. So I'm going to go for a 3-0. Maybe Keiro Figueroa gets on the score sheet, Berchimas on the score sheet, and we'll go Taha Habrun getting the other one. That's just my prediction. So let me know in the comments, guys. What do you think will happen in this game? Who's your preferred starting lineup? Because there's a lot of different ways you can go with this roster. There's a lot of options that I think are pretty similar in terms of level. You could change the defense, you could change the shape of the midfield, you could change the forwards. There's a lot of flexibility here. So let me know who you want to see. Let me know your thoughts on this type of solo content covering the U20s. Is this something you want to see us do for the remainder of the tournament? Spoiler alert, we're going to do it for the remainder of the tournament anyway, but let us know anyway if you like this kind of content. If you want to see this for more youth national team stuff in the future, whether it's even lower levels like the U17s, the U16s, stuff like that, we want to know your thoughts. We always value our viewers' input. But that's going to be it for today. I hope you guys are having a great day. Stay tuned for tomorrow for the game on FS2. Again, like I said in the intro of this video, make sure to watch it, support our boys in this tournament, and like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and we'll see you next time.